The farmer expected footprints of destruction, but what he found instead changed his understanding of the wilderness forever. A bear, enormous yet calm, was standing at the edge of his field, not to raid but to protect. In that silent morning, trust was forged without a single word. The morning mist still clung to the edges of the mountain slopes, turning the valley into a soft blur of greens and grays. Ravi, a farmer who had spent his life cultivating the patchwork of fields that clung stubbornly to the rocky terrain, stepped onto his porch. The early autumn chill bit at his fingers, but his gaze was fixed on the farthest corner of his wheat field. Something had stirred there overnight, something that had left traces more unsettling than usual. He squinted, scanning for signs of raiding animals. His neighbors had warned him of a particularly large bear in the vicinity. Last week, a small orchard was stripped bare in a neighboring village. Ravi's heartbeat quickened as he imagined the ruin that might await him. Yet the tracks on the soil were unusual. Instead of the chaotic trail of destruction he feared, the bear's footprints formed a measured, deliberate path along the edge of his field. Ravi stepped down the porch stairs, his boots crunching softly on the frost-hardened earth. Each step closer revealed the strange posture of the creature he had dreaded. The brown bear, massive and alert, was standing silently at the boundary of the field, facing outward toward the forest rather than the golden wheat. Its fur glistened with morning dew, and its eyes, dark and unflinching, held a strange intelligence. It was as if the bear had assessed the field and made a conscious decision, not to harm but to watch. Ravi froze, a mix of fear and curiosity rooting him to the spot. Never before had he seen a bear display such restraint. In that moment, the roles of predator and prey seemed to blur, replaced by something unfamiliar: mutual respect. Slowly, he withdrew a small notebook from his coat pocket, jotting down the observation, heart pounding with a strange exhilaration. The bear shifted slightly, its massive frame rippling with muscle, yet there was no aggression. Every instinct in Ravi screamed to retreat, yet he couldn't tear his eyes away. The field, normally a source of worry, felt strangely protected. It was as if the wild creature understood the value of the crops, not as food, but as something sacred to the man who tended them. Hours passed and Ravi kept a cautious watch from his porch. Wordlessly, the bear patrolled the perimeter, checking the edges of the field as the sun rose higher. Ravi's mind raced with questions. Why wasn't the bear raiding the crops? Was it hunger or some instinct beyond comprehension? And if it returned tomorrow, what would happen then? For now, the field remained untouched, the golden stalks swaying gently in the breeze as if acknowledging their unlikely guardian. When the first villagers began their routines, word of the bear spread quickly. Some were skeptical, warning Ravi that the creature could turn at any moment. Others watched from a distance, captivated by the unusual display of restraint. Even children, peeking from behind fences, whispered about the watching bear, with awe rather than fear. Ravi considered his next move carefully. He knew that feeding the bear could create dependency, yet ignoring its presence might provoke it if it felt threatened. There was a delicate balance to maintain. He decided finally to respect the animal's space, observing without interference, learning from its behavior and documenting every detail. In this silent exchange, a lesson unfolded. Coexistence was not about control but about understanding. By late afternoon, the bear retreated into the forest, leaving behind only its tracks and a lingering sense of wonder. Ravi studied the imprints, noticing how each step seemed intentional, almost measured, a pattern, not a random wander. The day ended quietly, but Ravi could not shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley, Ravi felt both fear and fascination intertwining. Tomorrow, he thought, might reveal the bear's purpose, or challenge the fragile peace that had been established. The mystery of the guardian at the field's edge was far from solved. What will the bear do next, and can a human and a wild animal truly coexist without conflict? The following morning, Ravi awoke before dawn. The chill was sharper now, hinting at the approach of winter, and frost had begun to lace the edges of the field. He brewed a small cup of tea, the steam curling into the crisp air, and stepped onto the porch once more. His eyes instinctively scanned the distant tree-line. The bear hadn't returned yet, but Ravi sensed that today would be different. The previous day's encounter had left an imprint deeper than he expected, an unspoken curiosity, a fragile bond forming through silence. As the first pale light touched the tips of the wheat, a distant movement caught his eye. The massive shape emerged from the shadows of the forest, deliberate, cautious, yet purposeful. The bear approached the field, but this time, It paused near the fence corner closest to the village path. It sniffed the air, nostrils flaring before turning its attention toward the crops. But instead of stepping in, it lingered at the boundary as though weighing its options. Ravi felt a mix of awe and apprehension. He knew from experience that a bear's behavior could be unpredictable. Yet the creature did nothing aggressive. It was as if it understood the invisible lines that separated wild from human life, instinct from respect. He crouched behind the porch railing, careful not to make sudden movements, his eyes locked on the animal. Every gesture of the bear seemed calculated, purposeful, a silent guardian watching over the wheat as though it recognized the toil behind every stalk. By mid-morning, villagers had gathered at a safe distance, whispering among themselves. Some brought their cameras, eager to capture the spectacle, while others shook their heads, fearful of provoking the bear. Ravi's neighbor, an older man named Kamal, called out, "Be careful, Ravi. You don't know what it might do." Ravi waved him off, explaining that the bear wasn't attacking, but Kamal's concern was palpable. Fear and fascination often walked side by side in these mountains. Ravi decided to document the bear's behavior systematically. He noted its patrol patterns, the way it circled the perimeter before retreating into the forest, and how it seemed to respond to any nearby humans without showing aggression. His observations revealed something remarkable. The bear appeared to recognize the rhythm of human activity, adjusting its path to avoid interference. It was not merely wandering, it was coexisting. By noon, Ravi noticed subtle changes. The bear paused near a patch of wheat that had been trampled by wind, gently stepping over it without crushing the stalks. Later, it approached the edge of the irrigation ditch, sniffing the water before moving on. Ravi realized that the creature was not only avoiding harm but seemed almost protective, maintaining the integrity of his crops. The thought was extraordinary, bordering on unbelievable, yet here it was, evident in the measured movements of a wild animal. As the day wore on, Ravi wrestled with an inner dilemma. Should he attempt to feed the bear to encourage its protective behavior, or would human interference disrupt the fragile balance? His instincts told him that respect required distance. Any attempt to control or influence the bear could have consequences he could not predict. Nature, he realized, demanded patience, observation, and humility. Evening fell, casting long shadows across the field, and the bear slowly retreated to the forest. Ravi felt a sense of both relief and anticipation. The silent interaction had deepened, yet questions remained. Why had the bear chosen this field specifically? What did it gain from guarding rather than raiding? And, most pressingly, would this pattern continue, or would the wild instincts of the creature eventually override this temporary truce? As Ravi walked along the field edge, inspecting for signs of disruption, he found fresh paw prints leading into a small grove of pine trees. Among the tracks were tiny impressions, cub-like, delicate, almost hidden beside the larger bear's prints. His heart skipped a beat. The guardian was not alone. The realization added complexity to the situation. The protective behavior might extend beyond the crops to the cub itself, introducing a new dynamic, responsibility, both human and animal, intertwined in unexpected ways. That night, Ravi could not sleep. Thoughts of the bear and its cub replayed endlessly. He understood that the balance he witnessed was fragile. One wrong move, one misjudged gesture, and the tenuous peace could vanish. But there was also hope. In a world often defined by conflict, he had glimpsed cooperation and mutual respect across species, a reminder that coexistence was possible if approached with care and awareness. Will the bear's protective behavior continue, and how will the presence of a cub change the delicate relationship between human and wild? The next morning, a thin fog hovered low over the field, curling around the stalks of golden wheat like whispered secrets. Ravi stepped onto his porch with a cautious optimism, heart still racing from yesterday's revelation of the cub's footprints. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and soil, and the distant rustle of the forest hinted that the bear had arrived. Sure enough, at the field's edge, the massive brown figure emerged, moving with deliberate care. Behind it, almost hidden by the tall stalks, a smaller shadow followed, a cub no more than a few months old. Its fur, a lighter shade of brown, shimmered with dew, and its movements were tentative, curious, yet hesitant. Ravi's breath caught. For the first time, he witnessed not just the protective adult bear, but the delicate dependency of its young. He remained still, remembering the lessons of the previous day. Any sudden movement could alarm the animals, destroying the fragile trust that had formed. Slowly, he retrieved a small notebook, jotting down observations: paw size, gait, how the cub mimicked the adult's movements. Every detail mattered. The cub paused near a patch of disturbed wheat, sniffing curiously at the golden stalks. Its mother, or guardian, stood alert, glancing back toward the forest as if ensuring safety. Ravi realized the complexity of this dynamic. The cub was learning, observing, and absorbing the behaviors necessary for survival. The adult bear's measured restraint was a lesson in coexistence, and the cub was the silent student. As he watched, a sudden gust of wind swept through the valley, bending the wheat like waves on a golden sea. The cub froze, ears twitching, eyes wide with uncertainty. The mother bear shifted slightly, moving between the cub and the edge of the forest, an instinctual barrier. Ravi's heart ached with empathy. He understood that fear and protection were intertwined in these creatures, just as they were in humans. Ravi made a conscious decision. He would not interfere. Instead, he chose observation, patience, and respect. Yet, instinctively, he reached into his coat pocket and drew a small piece of fruit he had kept from breakfast. A humble offering not to feed but to signal harmlessness. He placed it gently on the porch railing in full view but at a safe distance and stepped back. The cub's nose twitched as it caught the scent. It stepped cautiously toward the edge of the field, pausing at intervals to glance at its guardian. The adult bear remained vigilant, yet did not obstruct the cub's exploration. Slowly, the cub approached the fruit, sniffing it, then nudging it lightly with its nose. Ravi held his breath. The moment was fragile, a perfect balance of curiosity and caution. The cub's small paw tapped the fruit once, twice, then it retreated, glancing back at its guardian. Ravi smiled quietly, heart swelling with a mixture of relief and wonder. The tiny act, so simple yet profound, marked the first connection between human and animal. He understood the moral clearly. Respect and patience could bridge worlds, and understanding was a language beyond words. By midday, villagers had started whispering again. Some were captivated by the scene, while others warned Ravi of danger. But as he observed, he realized something extraordinary. The adult bear and cub were not just surviving. They were teaching him patience, respect, and a new perspective on coexistence. Each movement, each pause, each careful glance was a lesson. As the sun began its descent, the bears retreated toward the forest, the cub lingering briefly near the edge of the wheat before following its guardian. Ravi felt a mixture of awe and anxiety. Tomorrow the cub might grow bolder, or the adult bear might alter its patrol. The delicate rhythm of trust was still being written, and he was only a silent participant. That night, Ravi sat by the small fire inside his modest cabin, thinking about the day. The lesson was clear. Patience, observation, and respect created bonds stronger than fear. The cub's tentative trust, mirrored by the adult's protective restraint, offered hope. Yet, he could not shake the sense that this was only the beginning, a beginning that might test his understanding and courage in ways he could not yet predict. Will the cub come closer tomorrow, and can Ravi maintain this fragile trust without breaking the balance between curiosity and caution? The morning sun rose slowly over the valley, spilling amber light across the wheat fields. Ravi stepped onto his porch, a notebook in hand, ready to record observations. Yesterday's small connection with the cub had left him cautiously hopeful. He knew today could bring progress, or test the fragile trust that had begun forming between man and animals. Within minutes, the adult bear appeared at the edge of the field as if on schedule. The cub, slightly bolder than the day before, trailed behind, its small paws pressing into the soil with careful curiosity. Ravi noticed the subtle ways the cub mirrored the adult, sniffing the air, pausing at boundaries, and checking back frequently for reassurance. Even in these early moments, a pattern of learning was clear. The cub's instincts were guided not just by survival, but by the protective presence of its guardian. Ravi's heart swelled as he observed. He realized that, unintentionally, he too had become part of the cub's education. His small, non-threatening gestures, the piece of fruit yesterday, his quiet observation today, signaled that humans could coexist without harm. Respect was being communicated silently, a shared understanding across species. Around mid-morning, a sudden noise shattered the morning calm. A villager's dog, unleashed and barking, ran across the field toward the bears. The cub froze, ears flattening, while the adult bear stood rigid, muscles tense. Ravi's instincts screamed danger. One wrong move and the delicate trust could shatter. He ran toward the noise, waving his arms and shouting, "Go back! Go back!" The dog retreated, yelping, and the bears froze for a tense moment before the adult nudged the cub gently, guiding it away from the disturbance. Ravi exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. This incident had reinforced a crucial lesson. Trust was fragile and respect required vigilance. It also highlighted the bear's protective instincts, a reminder that the wild cannot be controlled, only respected. The cub, having witnessed the adult's calm intervention, seemed to understand the lesson. Guidance and protection come from strength tempered with patience. By afternoon, Ravi decided to test the limits of this trust cautiously. He left a small tray of fresh vegetables at the far corner of the porch, stepping back to observe. The cub approached slowly, sniffing the tray, while the adult bear kept a watchful eye from a distance. Each bite the cub took was deliberate, measured, and unhurried. It was learning not just from its mother, but from the environment shaped by the farmer's careful, respectful behavior. The villagers watched from afar, some whispering in disbelief. "Why does it behave this way?" one asked. "It should be rating." Ravi shook his head. Coexistence was not about obedience or control, it was about mutual understanding. This was a lesson in respect, empathy, and patience, lessons the cub would carry into adulthood. Evening approached, painting the valley in shades of gold and deep orange. The adult bear finally led the cub back toward the forest, moving with the same deliberate care that had defined its every action since the first day. Ravi stayed on the porch, notebook in hand, reflecting on what he had witnessed. Today had been about more than observation. It had been about understanding the rhythms of nature and the subtle language of trust. As the night settled, Ravi could not ignore a growing concern. While the cub had learned quickly, it was still vulnerable. Predators, human interference, or even a moment of fear could disrupt everything. Tomorrow might bring new challenges, testing both his patience and the delicate bond forming between human and bear. How will Ravi navigate potential dangers tomorrow, and can this fragile trust survive interference from the outside world? The next morning, the valley was draped in a soft gray mist. Ravi stepped onto his porch, the chill biting at his fingers, his notebook clutched tightly. The previous days had been filled with small gestures of understanding, but today he sensed a challenge approaching. A farmer's intuition is often subtle, a feeling rooted in years of working with land, weather, and animals. And Ravi felt that today's encounter would test the fragile rhythm he had established with the bears. By sunrise, the adult bear emerged at the field's edge, cub trailing behind with tentative steps. Their coordinated patrol of the wheat, once smooth and deliberate, now bore the tension of an unseen disturbance. Ravi noticed movement in the forest, a human hiker, unaware of the bear's presence, wandering too close to the field. The adult bear stiffened, muscles tensing beneath its thick fur, while the cub froze mid-step, uncertainty and fear radiating from its small frame. Ravi's heart raced. The situation was delicate. One wrong action, by him, the bears, or the hiker, could shatter the fragile trust that had taken days to establish. Carefully, he raised a hand in a calming gesture, speaking softly in the local dialect, hoping the bears would interpret his presence as non-threatening. The adult bear's eyes flicked toward him, a silent acknowledgement that Ravi was no danger. The hiker, oblivious, approached the field, stepping near the boundary. The adult bear let out a low, rumbling growl, not aggressive but a clear warning. The cub scuttled closer to its guardian, instinctively learning the lesson Ravi had already witnessed. Strength paired with restraint, protection without unnecessary violence. Ravi held his breath, aware that the next moments would determine the survival of the delicate balance. Slowly, Ravi approached the hiker, keeping his movements measured. "Please stay back," he said, voice calm yet firm. The hiker froze, eyes widening as he realized the presence of the massive bear and its cub. The adult bear's gaze never left him, but it did not advance. The lesson was clear. The forest and the field had boundaries and respect was required. The cub, observing the interaction, began mimicking its guardian's posture. Low, cautious, attentive. Ravi felt a surge of relief. The small bear was learning not only from instinct but from the modeled behavior of both the adult bear and the human who respected boundaries. Trust, it seemed, was a shared language across species. By midday, the hiker retreated cautiously, leaving the field and bears undisturbed. Ravi exhaled slowly, reflecting on the morning's tension. Today had been the first real test, an external variable challenging the fragile trust that had been carefully nurtured. The bears had responded with discipline and measured restraint, and the cub had absorbed the lesson in observation and respect. Yet, Ravi knew this was only the beginning. The valley was not a closed system. Other humans, predators, and unforeseen events could disrupt the harmony at any time. Tomorrow, he thought, could bring another test, perhaps more challenging. But the day had reinforced a profound truth. Coexistence was not passive. It required vigilance, patience, and a constant dialogue between the wild and human realms. As evening fell, painting the wheat fields in shades of copper and gold, Ravi watched the bears retreat into the forest. He could see the cub glancing back at the field one last time before following its guardian. The silent communication between them, the shared understanding, left Ravi both hopeful and apprehensive. With external challenges testing their fragile trust, will the bond between farmer, adult bear and cub survive, or will disruption bring fear and conflict back into the field? The dawn broke with a soft blush of gold, spilling over the valley and brushing the wheat with warmth. Ravi stepped onto his porch, notebook in hand, aware that every morning now held the potential for unexpected lessons. The cub's presence in the field had become more than observation. It was becoming a living testament to the delicate dance between fear and trust. By mid-morning, the adult bear appeared at its usual spot along the field's edge. The cub followed closely, but today there was something different in its behavior. It lingered slightly farther from its guardian, taking tentative steps toward the porch itself. Ravi's heart pounded. This was a risk. The cub was testing boundaries, moving closer to the human who had remained respectfully distant. Yet the movement was careful, curious, and most importantly, aware of the adult bear's watchful eyes. Ravi stayed still, his hands empty, exuding calm. He knew the importance of allowing the cub to make its own choice. Any sudden gesture, any sign of threat, could undo the fragile trust painstakingly built over days. He watched as the cub paused, sniffing the air, tilting its head, and then with a tentative paw tapped the edge of the porch. The adult bear's eyes followed every movement, muscles tensed but non-aggressive, a silent mentor guiding the young one. The moment stretched, fragile and unspoken. Ravi slowly reached into his pocket, not for food this time, but a small stick he had left from morning chores. He placed it on the porch edge, a gesture of safe interaction rather than reward. The cub sniffed the stick, nudged it gently with its nose, then glanced back at its guardian for approval. The adult bear nodded, or at least shifted in a way that conveyed affirmation, and the cub grew bolder. Ravi could hardly believe the scene unfolding before him. The cub was learning the principles of trust, patience, and observation from both its parent and this human who remained respectful and cautious. It was a silent education, a lesson in coexistence that transcended language. He jotted down notes furiously, recording the cub's gestures, pauses, and the subtle cues of the adult bear. Each movement carried meaning. By late morning, the village children had gathered at a safe distance, whispering with excitement. "It's coming closer," one exclaimed. Ravi raised a hand gently, reminding them to stay back. He knew the balance was delicate. Excess curiosity or interference could unravel everything. The cub's tentative approach to the porch was not just physical, it was symbolic. A step toward understanding, a small bridge between the wild and human worlds. Then, unexpectedly, a shadow passed near the tree line, a predator, perhaps a fox, drawn by the scent of the cub. The adult bear stiffened instantly, stepping between the threat and its young one. The cub froze, looking to its guardian, then toward Ravi. The message was clear: vigilance, protection, and awareness were key to survival. Ravi's presence remained calm, a silent partner in the lesson, but the stakes were unmistakably real. As the sun climbed higher, the predator retreated, the adult bear relaxing once more, and the cub tentatively resumed its cautious exploration. Ravi exhaled, understanding that today's events had reinforced the most crucial lesson. Trust and courage must be balanced with respect for boundaries and the unpredictability of the world. Evening fell, draping the valley in amber and shadow. The bears retreated toward the forest, the cub glancing back once more before following. Ravi remained on the porch, notebook in hand, reflecting on the day. The cub's small step of trust had been a triumph, yet he knew tomorrow could present challenges more profound than any he had faced so far. Will the cub continue to grow bolder, and how will Ravi navigate the challenges that come with deeper trust? Can coexistence truly be sustainable as boundaries are tested? The next morning, Ravi awoke to an unusual quiet. The valley, normally alive with the rustle of leaves and chirping birds, seemed suspended in tension. Stepping onto the porch, he noticed the adult bear and its cub lingering at the usual edge of the field, but their behavior was different. Alert, ears pricked, muscles taut. Something was off. Before he could analyze further, the distant hum of a vehicle reached his ears. A group of loggers, unfamiliar with the valley's delicate ecosystem, had entered the area. Their trucks rumbled through the dirt paths, carrying heavy equipment and loud chainsaws. The bears froze and the cub whimpered softly, huddling closer to its guardian. Ravi's stomach tightened. The fragile trust that had developed over a week could be shattered in moments. He ran down the porch steps, waving his arms and shouting toward the intruders, hoping to warn them without provoking the bears. "Please, stop. There are bears here." His voice carried across the field, but the loggers were focused on clearing paths for timber. The adult bear growled, a low, resonant warning that seemed to vibrate through the morning air. The cub ducked behind its parent, eyes wide with fear. Ravi knew he had to act carefully. Any sudden movement could be interpreted as a threat, either by the humans or the bears. He retrieved a small flare from his shed, a precaution he had kept for emergencies, and ignited it at a safe distance, a signal of urgency rather than aggression. The loggers finally stopped, glancing toward the bear, fear creeping into their expressions. Slowly they retreated, recognizing the presence of the wild guardians. The bears remained at the edge of the field, tense but unharmed. Ravi exhaled, relief mixing with anxiety. Today had been the first major test not just for the cub and its guardian, but for him as a human participant in this delicate ecosystem. He realized that coexistence was not only about patience and respect, it also required action, vigilance, and the courage to intervene when external threats emerged. By afternoon, the valley returned to a fragile calm, though Ravi could sense the residual tension in the air. The cub began tentatively exploring the edge of the field again, glancing repeatedly at its guardian and toward Ravi. The adult bear's protective instincts had been tested, yet it had maintained measured restraint, teaching the cub the most important lesson of all. Caution does not equal fear, protection can be deliberate and controlled. Ravi spent the evening reflecting on the day's events. He wrote detailed notes in his journal, documenting the cub's behavior, the adult bear's protective actions, and his own interventions. He understood that the moral of this story extended beyond the field. Coexistence requires awareness of the broader environment, courage to act in moments of danger, and respect for boundaries that cannot be crossed. As night fell, the bears retreated into the forest, moving carefully, the cub occasionally glancing back toward the field. Ravi watched until they disappeared from view, a mixture of pride and concern tightening in his chest. He knew the valley was a fragile world, and tomorrow could bring new challenges, perhaps more dangerous than any he had faced so far. Will the cub and its guardian continue to trust humans after the intrusion, and can Ravi maintain the delicate balance between intervention and respect? What lessons will the cub carry forward from this first real test? The morning air was tinged with the earthy scent of dew, and Ravi stepped onto his porch with a cautious optimism. The events of yesterday still echoed in his mind. The tension with the loggers had tested the fragile trust, but the bears had responded with restraint, and the cub had observed, learning the importance of patience and vigilance. As he scanned the field, the adult bear and cub appeared at their usual spot. This time, the cub lingered near the porch, eyes flicking between Ravi and the golden wheat. It was bolder than before, a subtle curiosity pulling it closer to the human who had maintained a respectful distance. Ravi remained still, allowing the cub to approach at its own pace, understanding that trust could not be forced. Slowly, the cub crept forward, sniffing at the ground near Ravi's boots. Ravi spoke softly, his voice low and calming, "It's okay, you're safe." The cub paused, ear flicking at the sound, then took another tentative step. The adult bear watched closely, muscles relaxed but alert, signaling approval to the cub. Ravi's heart swelled. This was more than observation, it was connection. By mid-morning, Ravi decided to leave a small assortment of fruits and vegetables on the porch, a gesture of goodwill rather than reward. The cub approached cautiously, nudging the items with its nose, while the adult bear stood a respectful distance away, guarding yet allowing the interaction. This delicate dance, trust, respect, patience, was now being practiced daily. The village children who had been watching from afar, whispered excitedly. Ravi reminded them to stay back, knowing that overenthusiastic attention could undo the bond forming. The cub's eyes lingered on Ravi, its small gestures conveying curiosity and a subtle understanding that this human was not a threat. As afternoon approached, the cub grew more confident, stepping closer to the porch each time Ravi moved slightly toward the edge. It was learning not only from its guardian but from Ravi's consistent calm presence. The adult bear's trust in the farmer was mirrored in the cub, showing that coexistence required consistency and patience from both sides. Later, a sudden rustle in the forest reminded Ravi that the valley was still wild and unpredictable. The adult bear immediately positioned itself between the cub and the disturbance, teaching a critical lesson. Caution and protection are necessary, but panic is not. The cub froze, eyes wide, then slowly settled, observing the adult's measured response. Ravi realized that the moral of coexistence extended beyond the field. It was about respect for the rules of life, for nature, and for the delicate bonds that hold these worlds together. As sunset painted the valley in deep orange and gold, the cub lingered for a few moments, then followed its guardian back into the forest. Ravi remained on the porch, notebook in hand, reflecting on the day. Trust, he understood, was not a single moment but a series of consistent actions, reinforced by patience, respect, and awareness. As the cub grows bolder and the field faces more external threats, will the trust between humans and bears endure, or will a single misstep undo all the careful lessons learned? The valley awoke in a soft golden haze, the wheat swaying gently as if holding its breath. Ravi stepped onto his porch, notebook in hand, aware that the weeks of careful observation and interaction with the bears had led to something remarkable. A silent understanding, a fragile bond built on respect, patience, and trust. By mid-morning, the adult bear appeared at the edge of the field, cub trailing closely. The cub, bolder than ever, lingered near the porch, its small paws pressing lightly against the earth as it observed Ravi's movements. But today the atmosphere was charged with an unusual tension. There was something in the air, a disturbance Ravi could not yet see. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the forest edge. A fallen tree, loosened by overnight rain, blocked part of the path near the wheat. The cub froze, ears twitching, eyes wide with fear. The adult bear stepped between the cub and the obstacle, muscles rippling, posture protective yet controlled. Ravi's heart raced. This was more than a test. It was a real-life moment where instinct, patience, and trust intersected. Ravi approached cautiously, speaking softly, "It's okay, don't panic." The bear's eyes followed his voice, acknowledging his presence as non-threatening. Slowly, the cub took a tentative step around the tree, glancing back at its guardian and then at Ravi. The adult bear relaxed slightly, signaling that the cub's cautious action was acceptable. At that moment, a sudden movement caught Ravi's attention. A wild dog, drawn by the scent of the cub, emerged from the forest. The adult bear immediately positioned itself between the intruder and its young, growling low and resonant. The cub froze, instinctively following the adult's lead. Ravi realized that this was the ultimate test of the trust and patience they had cultivated together. He stepped forward, carefully placing himself between the wild dog and the cub, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. The dog paused, growled, then retreated, startled by the combined presence of human and bear. The tension broke, but the lesson had been learned. The cub had witnessed firsthand the principles of caution, protection, and controlled intervention, while Ravi had experienced the responsibility of coexistence in its most immediate form. By late afternoon, the valley returned to calm. The adult bear and cub retreated toward the forest, but the cub paused briefly near the field's edge, glancing at Ravi as if acknowledging the bond that had grown between them. Ravi smiled quietly, understanding that trust, once earned, required reinforcement and respect, yet could flourish even in a world filled with unpredictable challenges. The moral was clear. Coexistence demands vigilance, patience, empathy, and courage. The cub had learned, through observation and guided experience, that the world could be navigated safely with understanding and restraint. Ravi, too, had grown, realizing that human responsibility extends beyond mere care. It is a partnership with nature, requiring humility and action when needed. As the cub grows and the adult bear continues to guide it, what new challenges await in the coming seasons? Can the delicate trust between human and wild endure the inevitable changes of the world? The valley woke to the soft hum of morning life, birds chirping, leaves rustling, and the golden wheat glowing in the early light. Ravi stepped onto his porch with a sense of calm determination, notebook in hand, reflecting on the days and weeks that had passed. The relationship with the adult bear and its cub had grown into something rare, a bond defined by respect, patience, and mutual understanding. By mid-morning, the adult bear appeared at the edge of the field, cub trailing closely. The cub, now more confident, stepped forward without hesitation, exploring the porch edge while glancing at Ravi. There was no fear, only curiosity and the subtle acknowledgement that he was part of a shared rhythm, one built on trust. Ravi remained still, allowing the interaction to unfold naturally, understanding that the essence of coexistence is respect without interference. Earlier threats, the hiker, the loggers, and the wild dog, had all tested the fragile harmony of the valley. But each challenge had reinforced an essential lesson. Trust is earned through patience, vigilance, and consistent respect. The cub, having observed the adult bear's calm guidance and Ravi's non-threatening presence, had internalized these principles. The adult bear, in turn, recognized Ravi as an ally rather than a threat, a human capable of contributing to the delicate balance of life in the field. By midday, Ravi carefully placed a small assortment of fruits and vegetables near the porch, not as a reward but as a gesture of continued peace. The cub approached confidently, sniffing the items, while the adult bear maintained a watchful distance. The valley seemed to hold its breath, the wheat swaying gently as if approving this coexistence. Ravi realized that the moral of this unfolding story was universal. Harmony is possible when boundaries are respected, trust is nurtured, and courage is exercised wisely. In the afternoon, the cub ventured slightly farther into the field, testing its new confidence, while the adult bear followed closely. Ravi observed, taking notes on behavior, learning that the cub had gained more than survival skills. It had absorbed the essence of coexistence, understanding that the world was neither entirely dangerous nor entirely safe, but a space navigated best with awareness, patience, and respect. As sunset painted the valley in deep amber and rose, the adult bear and cub retreated into the forest, glancing back briefly at the field and Ravi's porch. This simple glance, repeated over time, had become a symbolic gesture, a recognition of shared space, mutual understanding, and the lessons learned through observation and cautious interaction. Ravi exhaled, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. The valley had returned to a state of quiet harmony. The cub had grown more confident, the adult bear more trusting, and Ravi more aware of his responsibility as a steward of this fragile ecosystem. The story had reached a resolution not through dominance or control, but through respect, patience, and courageous action when necessary. As seasons change and the cub grows, what future challenges will test this hard-earned harmony? How can humans continue to coexist with wildlife without disrupting the delicate balance? Reflect on your own environment. What lessons can we take from this story about patience, respect, and coexistence with the world around us? Share your thoughts in the comments below.